Hello students. So in this micro lecture we are going to cover bacteria shape and cell wall structure. Now this is an important concept for you to understand because it sets the foundation for how we study microbes in the laboratory setting. This image here is a microscope image of Bacillus cereus that was stained using what's called the Gram reaction, and it allows us to visually see the unique shape of the bacteria. Now, when we look at bacteria, we see that it's a relatively simple structure compared to, say, our cells. What you have in a bacteria is the bacterial DNA that is not encased in a nucleus. Instead, it's sort of found central to the bacteria, and surrounding it are ribosomes, which are important in protein synthesis. It's these little red dots in the image. Now, surrounding the DNA and the ribosome and the cytoplasm, you have the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane is sort of what regulates what goes in and out of the cell. And immediately on top, or right just outside of the bacteria plasma membrane, is what we call the cell wall. Okay, the cell wall is in this yellow color here in this image. Now the cell wall is what gives the bacteria structure and shape and some type of rigidity. Okay, you can also have additional appendages like this pili, which are these little spikes that come out of the bacteria. You also have a flagellum that's involved in movement, and that allows bacteria to sort of be able to move and interact and attach to their environment. So let's look at that cell wall structure in a little bit more detail. When we look at the different types of cell shapes that bacteria can have, you can see that there's a lot of diversity. The first cell shape is coccus, which are little circles, all right? And in addition to the cell shape, bacteria can come in different arrangements. So for example, you can have Diplococcus, diplo meaning two. You can have Streptococcus, which sort of look like pearls on a chain. Anytime you see the word strepto, I want you to think of a chain. You can also have Staphylococcus, which sort of allow the bacteria to be in grape-like clusters. And then you can also have tetrads, which are four little cocci put together. In addition to coccus shape, bacteria can also be found in what we call a bacillus shape. All right? I want you to think of a long, elongated rod. Similar to cocci, you can have Diplobacillus, meaning two, Streptobacillus, so think of little bacilli in a chain. Sometimes they look almost like a white picket fence, which is called an arrangement called palisades. And then sometimes the bacteria is not quite bacillus, not quite coccus, it's a little bit of both, and so we have a name called Coccobacillus. The third type of shape that bacteria can be found in is what we call a spiral shape. Now, there's a lot more different arrangements, but I'm just giving you the three main forms. You can have Vibrio, which sort of make the bacteria look like a kidney bean. You can have a spirochete, which is a very elongated, spiral-shaped bacteria, or they can be a little bit more short and more corkscrew form. Now, what gives the bacteria all of these different types of shapes is the cell wall. And the cell wall is made of molecules that look very similar to glucose, which is a sugar. The cell wall is made of two main molecules called N-acetylglucosamine, abbreviated as NAG, and N-acetylmuramic acid, which is abbreviated as NAM. These NAG and NAM molecules form together into different types of sugar chains. And then these individual sugar chains of NAG and NAM are then linked together in what we call a tetrapeptide cross bridge. Okay, so I want you to think of these long chains of NAG and NAM that then get put together in a three-dimensional crystal structure, all right, linked together by these tetrapeptide bonds. The image you're seeing, this bonded form of NAG and NAM, is what we call the peptidoglycan. Peptido for that peptide bond, glycan, which means sugar or chains of sugars. Now, bacteria can be divided into two main types of cell wall structures. The first kind of cell wall structure is what we call a gram-positive cell wall. When we look at a gram-positive cell wall, what we see is that it's made of predominantly a very thick peptidoglycan layer. Okay, it's very, very thick. In addition, a gram-positive cell wall is going to have lipoteichoic acid. It's these steel, I want you to think of it as like steel bars that anchor that peptidoglycan to the plasma membrane or the cell membrane right below. Okay? The second kind of cell wall structure that bacteria can have is what we call a gram-negative cell wall. It looks very different from the gram-positive. In a gram-negative cell wall, that peptidoglycan is actually very, very thin. Okay, that peptidoglycan is very thin. In addition, it does not have lipoteichoic acid, and instead what it has is an additional outer membrane. Okay, it almost looks like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, that outer membrane has a very important molecule called the endotoxin. Okay, the endotoxin. The endotoxin is also known as the LPS, the lipopolysaccharide. Okay, this will become important because that endotoxin is usually what makes people sick when they have a bacterial infection. Okay, in between this outer membrane and the plasma membrane is what we call the periplasmic space. Okay, so this is a gram-negative cell wall. It's very different from a gram-positive cell wall. We'll learn a lot more about the outer membrane of a gram-negative bacteria in our next lecture. This is a nice little comparison of gram-positive cell walls and gram-negative cell walls. So remember, gram-positive cell walls have a thick peptidoglycan. Gram-negative cell walls have a thin peptidoglycan. You have no periplasmic space in a gram-positive cell wall, while in a gram-negative you do have that periplasmic space. And then remember, in a gram-negative you have this additional outer membrane that has the lipopolysaccharide, which is a type of endotoxin. This is missing from a gram-positive cell wall, and instead, a gram-positive cell wall has lipoteichoic acid that anchors the bacteria cell wall to the plasma membrane. All right. Okay, let's stop here, and then I'll see you in the next micro lecture. Thank you.